like, they were drinking hard too. I mean, wasn't like, you know, it's not appealing when you're 8 months pregnant.
One of the most explosive female voices to ever light up MTV in 1984, the woman behind the biggest power anthem of that summer, didn't lose her career to drugs or some shady contract or even a greedy manager. She walked away on purpose, a platinum album, a music video that played non-stop on MTV, and she just said, "I'm done." Can you believe that? Eddie Van Halen himself called her up, asking her to step in and replace David Lee Roth, and she told him no.
And we all went out to dinner, and I was 8 months pregnant at the time.
And it was like,
the timing was a little off, and he's like, "You have to tell me now."
That's right, she turned down Van Halen. So let's talk about how the warrior blasted through the walls of heartache before she decided to say goodbye to it all. For nearly 3 decades, Patty Smyth, born and raised in Brooklyn, lived a life that could have been a movie. Her mom, a trapeze artist who turned into a nightclub owner and managed the rock legend Link Wray. Yeah, the same guy who did Rumble, the track Jimmy Page said made him want to play guitar. Total legend status. Her mom was part rock and roll queen, part daredevil, part boss lady. Talk about a wild combo. Her dad worked construction, but her parents split when Patty was just 12. By then, she'd already been in trouble, twice. Once for mouthing off to a cop, and another time just hanging on the corner trying to score. She wasn't some shiny pop puppet. She was a real New York kid with an edge and a story. Before she ever set foot in a recording studio, she'd already seen the inside of a police car. At 15, she was performing her first gig at Folk City in Greenwich Village, that same gritty little stage where Bob Dylan cut his teeth. Imagine that. A teenager who's already been through it, standing in the same spot as Dylan once did. She wasn't created by a record label. She was raw, loud, and real. Fast forward to 1981. Guitarist Zach Smith was putting together a band in New York and found Patty. He brought in bassist Ivan Elias, keyboardist Benji King, drummer Frankie LaRocca, and guitarist Keith Mack. Together they became Scandal, and by 1982 they stormed into Columbia Records and dropped their self-titled EP, which went on to become the best-selling EP in Columbia's history. Insane, right? Their breakout track, Goodbye to You, written by Zach Smith, didn't exactly blow up the charts. It only reached number 65 on the Billboard Hot 100. On paper, it looked like a flop, but MTV changed everything. That video was on heavy rotation until the tape practically burned out. Patty in that red dress spinning and jumping like she owned the world. It was unforgettable. Here's the thing. When I talk about those hair metal bands, they usually got crushed when grunge hit. But with these pop rock artists from the same era, the story's different. So many of them couldn't catch a break on the radio, but MTV needed videos. And that's where artists like Patty Smyth and Scandal found their shot. When you saw Patty on that screen, wild energy blazing, it didn't matter what the charts said. You knew she was a star. Patty Smyth was belting those lyrics like she was trying to set the mic on fire. You couldn't look away even if you tried. That voice, that energy. She made you feel every word. And that track, Goodbye to You, wasn't just catchy. It was pure joy in musical form. It had that upbeat vibe that just made you smile without even knowing why. Every time it came on, it was like sunshine blasting through the TV screen. MTV turned Scandal into overnight stars before most radio DJs even knew they existed. They didn't need airplay. They had style, sound, and a front woman who could outshine anyone. Columbia Records was hyped, demanding a full album immediately. And here's a wild detail. Before Scandal even recorded that full project, a young John Bon Jovi showed up in their 1983 music video for Love's Got a Line on You. Yeah, that Bon Jovi. The video had a few different versions floating around, one using the raw demo version. And that version had this gritty, almost 70s garage rock feel to it before the polished modern version dropped later. And that kid on guitar? Bon Jovi was just some teenager working as a janitor at the power station studio, sweeping floors while dreaming big. His cousin Tony owned the place, so he hung around soaking it all in. Then he formed his own band, and, well, the rest is history. By 1984, Scandal finally dropped their full album, The Warrior. The title track, The Warrior, written by the hit-making powerhouse Holly Knight and Nick Gilder, was an explosion. It tore up the charts, number 7 on the Billboard Hot 100, number 1 on the mainstream rock chart, and number 1 in Canada. Even folks who didn't normally rock out were shouting "bang, bang" right along with her. The album itself hit number 17 on the Billboard 200, stayed there for an incredible 41 weeks, and went platinum. But behind all that success came tension. Columbia forced Patty into doing a concept music video she hated. When she saw the final cut, she was mortified. She begged them not to release it. She said it looked like an off-Broadway version of Cats. But the label ignored her and dropped it anyway. Ironically, it became one of the most played videos on MTV that year. The execs were thrilled, and Patty, she despised every second of that fake, flashy image she never asked for. There she was, Patty Smyth, just 27 years old, standing center stage in MTV's blazing spotlight, shouting, "Shooting at the walls of heartache, bang, bang," while the entire country sang along. A kid from Brooklyn who once got arrested at 12 was now in millions of living rooms across America. But while the world was celebrating her, something darker was creeping in behind the scenes. Because inside Scandal, things were already starting to rot. The band was built around Zach Smith, and that's exactly where the trouble began. Zach Smith was the mastermind, the guy who wrote their breakout hit, built the lineup from scratch, and gave Scandal its sound. But when MTV turned on those cameras, guess who they put in front of the lens? Not Zach. It was all Patty Smyth. Smith. Yeah, even their names sounded tangled, but there was no confusion about who the world saw. Patty was the face, the fire, the leather, the voice, the whole vibe. And Columbia Records made it official. They didn't promote Scandal anymore. They pushed Scandal featuring Patty Smyth. Now picture this. You're Zach Smith, the founder, watching your name shrink smaller and smaller on the album cover while the singer you discovered becomes a superstar. Brutal. It's a story as old as rock itself, and it crushed plenty of bands in the 80s. Soon, Scandal started falling apart from the inside. Frankie LaRocca quit before the Warrior sessions even began, and in came Tommy Price to play drums. But halfway through recording, Tommy got a killer offer. Billy Idol wanted him in his band. Better money, better exposure, and Billy even offered him a cut of record sales, something Scandal didn't do. Who wouldn't take that deal? So Tommy packed up and walked out mid-session. No hard feelings, that's just the business, and money always talks louder than loyalty. Patty knew the vibe was crumbling. Drummer Pandy Newland had to step in to finish the last 2 tracks, but even Patty admitted later, once Tommy left, it felt like the band's soul was gone. There was nothing left holding her there. By the end of the Warrior tour in late '84, the band was totally gutted. Zach Smith was out. Frankie gone. Ivan and Benji gone. The only ones left standing were Patty Smyth and guitarist Keith Mack. And Patty didn't sugarcoat it. She straight up said she and Zach never got along. They clashed non-stop. Oil and water, she called it. The guy who built the band, wrote their biggest hit, and brought her into the spotlight, was now out of the picture completely. Scandal didn't crash because of bad reviews or some scandalous headline. It imploded from the inside. The band ate itself alive. By 1985, Scandal was officially done. 1 EP, 1 full-length album, 2 charting singles, 1 platinum record, and that was it. The whole rise and fall of Scandal fit inside the time it takes for a parking meter to run out. But here's where things take a wild left turn, because just as Scandal was collapsing, Van Halen came knocking. That same year, David Lee Roth left Van Halen, the biggest hard rock band in the world, and they needed a new lead singer. And guess what? Eddie Van Halen didn't call Sammy Hagar first. He called Patty Smyth. This wasn't some casual, "Hey, would you maybe be interested" moment. Eddie was serious. He asked her more than once. Van Halen was untouchable at that point, fresh off their massive 1984 album and sold-out arena tour. They were rock royalty sitting on top of the world. But Patty had her own world spinning. She was 8 months pregnant and newly married to Richard Hell, the punk legend from television and the Voidoids. She didn't drink, didn't party, and definitely wasn't about that wild backstage chaos. Van Halen, on the other hand, lived in a blur of booze, guitars, and fistfights. And there was more. Patty was pure New York grit, and Van Halen was pure L.A. flash. She didn't want to uproot her life, move across the country, or raise a newborn in a band full of guys who were constantly arguing and partying. Eddie respected her, but he needed an answer, fast. "I need a yes or no so we can move on," he told her. So there she was, the woman who could have fronted Van Halen at their peak, standing at a crossroads. And what she said next would change everything. So Patty looked Eddie Van Halen dead in the eye and said no. She turned him down, just like that. But here's the secret twist. Eddie didn't want anyone to know she was his first choice. He actually asked her to keep quiet about it because he didn't want Sammy Hagar finding out he was basically the backup plan. So Patty kept her lips sealed for years, never telling a soul. Then Eddie called Sammy. Sammy said yes, and just like that, the Van Hagar era was born. But man, can you imagine how different rock history would have sounded if it had been Van Smith instead? Picture that mix, Patty's razor-sharp vocals over Eddie's guitar magic. Fans still debate it to this day. What would that sound have been like? Of course, Sammy Hagar became one of the biggest rock singers in the world, selling out arenas and keeping Van Halen on top for years. And all of it happened because one pregnant woman in Brooklyn said, "Nah, not for me." Wild, right? But here's the sting. Patty later admitted she regretted saying no. She watched Van Halen rocket right back to the top and couldn't help but wonder what could have been. She said straight up that turning it down probably cost her millions. But life moves fast, and Patty wasn't about to sit still. Instead of fronting Van Halen, she went solo. In 1987, Columbia released her debut solo album, Never Enough. Patty wanted the album credited to Scandal. She wanted to keep that band identity alive, but Columbia shut her down, insisting it come out as a Patty Smyth solo record. And honestly, that decision changed everything. The album got some love from critics and even spun out a few smaller singles, but it just didn't hit like The Warrior. The world didn't seem ready for a Scandal album without Scandal. The fire had cooled, and her career hit a rough patch. Meanwhile, her personal life wasn't doing much better. Her marriage to punk rocker Richard Hell fell apart, fast. By 1987, she was divorced, a single mom raising her daughter, with a record that barely made a dent and the memory of saying no to Van Halen still echoing in her head like a ghost. It was like a splinter she couldn't shake. But Patty Smyth? She's a survivor. She didn't fold. She reloaded. By 1992, she signed with MCA Records and dropped a self-titled album that would finally put her back on the map. And this time, she had Don Henley by her side. Yeah, that Don Henley from the Eagles. Together, they released a duet called Sometimes Love Just Ain't Enough. And guess what? It blew up. That song soared to #2 on the Billboard Hot 100, hit #1 in Canada, went gold, and became one of the most memorable power ballads of the early 90s. And let's be real. Anything Don Henley touches turns to gold. Though, between us, don't tell Don I said that. He's known for not loving people talking about him. Patty already had chemistry with Henley. She'd worked with him on his solo albums Building the Perfect Beast and The End of the Innocents. So when they joined forces, it was magic. Their voices blended perfectly, and the song earned Patty a Grammy nomination for Best Pop Performance by a Duo or Group. And she wasn't done yet. In 1994, she co-wrote Look What Love Has Done for the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie Junior. That track got her an Academy Award nomination for Best Original Song. Even when she won, it never came easy. Her victories always showed up wrapped in chaos and surprise. On paper, her solo career looked solid, Grammy nods, chart toppers, movie soundtracks. But behind all that success, there was still that haunting what if hanging over her. What if she'd said yes to Eddie Van Halen? What if Van Smith had been real? The world will never know. But you gotta admit, it would have been one hell of a ride. But Patty never hit the gas again. She eased off and took a totally different road. In 1993, she met tennis legend John McEnroe at a Christmas party, and sparks flew instantly. They started dating, and by 1997, they secretly tied the knot in Hawaii, on Oscar night of all nights. So the press would be too distracted to notice. Smooth move, right? So there she was, Patty Smyth, the powerhouse voice behind The Warrior, a platinum-selling artist with a #2 hit, Grammy and Oscar nominations. And she just walked away. No dramatic goodbye, no scandalous tabloid story. She simply left the stage behind. She and McEnroe built a life together, raising a blended family of 6 kids. For nearly 3 decades, she focused on home, not headlines. She didn't release another album of original music until 2020. That's 28 years of total silence. Meanwhile, the rest of Scandal's story turned heartbreakingly tragic. Bassist Ivan Elias lost his battle with lymphoma in June 1995, just in his early 40s. Frankie LaRocca, their original drummer, developed heart problems and passed away in 2005 at 51 after surgery complications. Keyboardist Benji King suffered a fatal fall in 2012 at age 58. 3 out of 6 original members of Scandal, gone. Tommy Price, the drummer who left mid-session for Billy Idol, found success playing with Joan Jett and the Blackhearts for decades. He rocked the stage for nearly 30 years before passing away in October 2025 at 68. And Zach Smith, the man who built Scandal from the ground up, wrote Goodbye to You and clashed with Patty through it all. Even he found his way back for a moment. He reunited with Patty and the gang for VH1's Bands Reunited special in 2004. They did a short East Coast tour and even hit Irving Plaza in New York in early 2025. But by 2007, Zach had stepped away again. Patty, on the other hand, was living a completely different kind of dream. She and McEnroe settled into Malibu's Paradise Cove, a $21 million oceanfront estate, with a combined net worth topping $100 million. They own about $50 million in real estate alone. So yeah, maybe she turned down Van Halen, but life still treated her pretty damn well. And here's the thing, she pulled off something rare in the rock world. Patty kept her marriage strong by keeping it quiet. No reality shows, no messy press drama, no screaming headlines. She once said she had a gut feeling that if they stayed low-key, they'd actually last. And she was right. Nearly 30 years later, they're still going strong. Then, in 2020, out of nowhere, Patty returned with a brand new album called It's About Time. She recorded it at Blackbird Studio in Nashville, produced by Dan Huff, and filled it with 6 original tracks and 2 covers. Critics loved it. The music felt real, mature, and honest. Sure, it didn't shake stadiums like The Warrior, but it didn't need to. Patty had nothing left to prove. After everything, the fame, the chaos, the heartbreak, and the silence, Patty Smyth came full circle. She didn't lose the war. She just walked off the battlefield before the explosions started. The world burned itself out chasing fame, while she found peace, love, and a legacy that still shines. Whether you think she's the smartest woman in rock or one of the biggest what-ifs in music history, one thing's for sure. When Patty Smyth said goodbye to you, this time she meant it. If you loved this story, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more wild music stories, and drop a comment below. Do you think Patty made the right choice turning down Van Halen? Let's hear your thoughts. See you in the next video.